Marcus Vale had collected a few hard-earned certainties over 15 years of working as an environmental systems engineer. 1. Air recyclers had an uncanny instinct for catastrophic timing and would always fail when replacement parts were least available. 2. Oil stains, once introduced to formal clothing, entered a lifelong relationship regardless of detergent advertising claims. And 3. No matter how much effort he put into preparation, he possessed a near mystical talent for appearing embarrassingly underdressed at prestigious functions. All 3 lessons were proving painfully accurate as he stood beneath the prismatic arches of Celesta Prime's throne hall, tugging at a collar that felt engineered by someone who assumed humans had redundant lungs. The annual convergence had transformed the palace into something resembling a cross between an interstellar summit and an obscenely expensive social gathering. Delegates from 47 star systems occupied the vast space, their varied anatomies turning the hall into a living exhibition of evolutionary possibility. The Carathi representatives wore sealed suits filled with methane, as they found oxygen mildly corrosive and deeply insulting. A Silene diplomat continuously misted her gills with a softly clicking humidifier. 3 members of the chorus collective debated greeting etiquette by arguing with themselves in layered harmony. Marcus was present only because his company had secured the palace's environmental upgrade contract, and his supervisor had decided that sending someone technical was safer than sending anyone who enjoyed politics. That distinction had landed Marcus here, trying to achieve the precise posture of being visible enough to count as present, while invisible enough to avoid conversation. He stationed himself beside a decorative column that looked like frozen light, its crystalline structure glowing in warm pulses that reminded him uncomfortably of a loading screen on his diagnostic tablet. The Celestians themselves drew attention effortlessly. Humanoid in general outline, they moved with a fluid grace that hinted at an evolutionary history shaped by lower gravity. Marcus's briefing materials had frustratingly avoided specifics, but one feature dominated their appearance: elongated ears that swept back in elegant points, longer than human ears and capable of independent motion. He had watched a court official track multiple conversations simultaneously, each ear pivoting toward a different speaker, while she carried on a fourth discussion without missing a beat. Their auditory perception made human hearing feel clumsy and dull by comparison. Queen Viendra presided from a throne carved from a single, massive opal, its surface shifting through pearlescent hues as light struck it. Authority clung to her as naturally as breath. Her silver-white hair cascaded like starlight refracted through ice, and her amber eyes carried the depth of ancient resin, warm and knowing. She was beautiful in a way that made Marcus acutely aware of the sweat pooling beneath his rented jacket. Beside her stood Princess Listen. Marcus felt an immediate, reflexive sympathy for the child, trapped in formal regalia that clearly prioritized symbolism over comfort. She couldn't have been more than 6, her ceremonial robes heavy enough to discourage movement entirely. Her hair was dark as interstellar void, a stark contrast to her mother's silver, and her small pointed ears twitched with barely contained restlessness. Her expression carried the resigned endurance of someone serving out an unfair sentence. The ceremony unfolded with the enthusiasm typical of compulsory diplomacy. Ambassador Thielvik of the Northern Trading Consortium had been speaking for what felt like an eternity about tariff alignment, his 3 voice boxes producing rich harmonics that lent undeserved grandeur to discussions of customs forms. Marcus coped by mentally modeling the throne room's airflow, calculating intake vents near the floor, exhaust channels in the vaulted ceiling, thermal layering, and the competing respiratory requirements of the assembled species. As long as his face remained politely attentive, no one noticed his mind doing something useful. He was midway through estimating particulate filtration efficiency when Princess Listen's head snapped sideways with the precision of a targeting system locking on. Her ears swung forward sharply, drawing nervous glances from nearby courtiers. Marcus, still thinking about pressure differentials, didn't immediately realize she was staring directly at him across the crowd. Then she moved, not walked, not advanced with ceremonial restraint. She ran. Her robes streamed behind her like an aerodynamic afterthought as she barreled through the assembled dignitaries. Conversations collapsed mid-syllable. Ambassador Thielvik fell silent, his three voices stopping one after another. A server froze with a tilted tray of drinks that somehow remained level through sheer disbelief. Marcus had barely 2 seconds to react before the princess collided with his legs and wrapped her arms around his waist with wholehearted enthusiasm. Her voice, muffled against his jacket, rang out joyfully. "It's you. You're the nice man." The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus could hear the Silene ambassador's humidifier clicking several rows away. Every eye in the hall fixed on him as he stood frozen, looking down at the small child clinging to him as though she'd found something precious she refused to lose. Queen Viendra rose from her throne. The movement was controlled and smooth, somehow more alarming than sudden anger. Palace guards subtly repositioned themselves. Marcus's brain, usually dependable in emergencies, offered no guidance whatsoever. Then memory caught up. 3 weeks earlier. An orbital station market. His lunch break. A small child crying by a decorative fountain, overwhelmed by crowds and clearly lost. He'd sat nearby, asked if she wanted company while waiting for help. When she couldn't speak through her fear, he'd done what his father once did for him, told stories. Not heroic ones. Mundane disasters. The time he vented an entire deck's atmosphere during routine maintenance. The incident involving a coffee machine and a waste recycler that somehow improved the coffee. He talked until she laughed. Then until security arrived. Apparently the child had been a princess. Queen Viendra approached with glacial composure. Princess Listen tightened her grip, pressing her face into Marcus's jacket. The queen stopped a few paces away. "Mr. Vale," she said, not asking, "you will accompany me for a private audience." Marcus attempted a bow while supporting the clinging child and failed at both. He nodded instead. Listen finally looked up at her mother. "Mother, this is the nice man from the station. He told me about the broken coffee machine and the cold people." "Yes, my love," the queen replied softly. "We are going to discuss exactly that." The walk through the palace corridors felt like an execution march, except Marcus's hand was held by a cheerful child describing how exciting this was. Guards flanked them precisely. Marcus focused on architecture to avoid panic walls grown rather than built, bioluminescent veins pulsing softly. Airflow tuned to exquisite tolerances. They entered a private chamber where decisions carried consequences. Marcus sat when instructed, and Listen immediately climbed into his lap and fell asleep. The queen watched. "Explain," she said calmly. "What happened at the station market?" Marcus told the truth, awkwardly and plainly. He'd seen a scared child. He'd stayed in public view. He'd talked until she laughed. "You didn't know who she was?" The queen asked. "No," Marcus said honestly. "I don't usually assume crying children are royalty." Something shifted. "She spoke of you for weeks," the queen said. "Asked when her friend might visit. She wants to study engineering because of you." Marcus muttered something about having average eyes. The queen almost smiled. "You will remain here as on-site project engineer," she decided. "My daughter has adopted you." Marcus accepted. Weeks passed. Listen found maintenance shafts. Learned about air systems. Skipped lessons. Laughed loudly. Palace staff adjusted. Then alarms sounded. Marcus ran diagnostics. Found breaches. Guided security. Manipulated atmospheric systems to slow attackers. Ran through tunnels. Reached Listen. Took her through secret paths. Delivered her safely. Afterward, The truth emerged. Extremists. A targeted attack. Queen Viendra confronted Marcus. You could have died. I could not try, he replied. She asked him to stay. Months later, Marcus stood again in the throne room. This time he belonged. Listen waved instead of running. Viendra smiled instead of calculating. Later, on the balcony, she leaned into him. She says letting her run to you was the best decision she ever made. Marcus smiled. Hearing a child inside calling for help with a math problem. Sometimes, the most important systems weren't mechanical at all. They were the ones that let people breathe easier together.